let's turn our attention to politics. Still plenty of uncertainty and possible contestation regarding the ANC's step-aside resolution. The deadline has arrived for ANC officials facing criminal charges to adhere to the resolution. Mdumiseni Ntuli is the ANC's provincial secretary in KwaZulu Natal. He joins us now to discuss some of the issues and this date. Mdumiseni, good morning to you, is now here. And as far as I understand, no one has stepped aside yet. What's your reaction?
Well, good morning, Gareth, and good morning to the fellow viewers of eNCA. Well, Gareth, first and foremost, let me, on behalf of the ANC Provincial Executive Committee, convey our sincere and heartfelt condolences to following the passing of Her Majesty, the Queen Mdumiseni Ntuli, who departed yesterday. And as the African National Congress, we wish to join the people of KwaZulu Natal in mourning the passing away of the leader of the Zulu nation. Secondly, as far as we are concerned as the ANC leadership, we have made the submissions that were required by the Secretary General in terms of the names of all our comrades who are charged and are currently attending the various court cases in the province of KwaZulu Natal. We are now awaiting the national officials, obviously through the National Working Committee, to finalize the terms of references or the terms and conditions under which each of our leaders who are in difficulties with the law are supposed to be stepping aside in line with. So from where we are, we've done the part that we're required to do by the national leadership, and we now await the national leadership to give us the next line of march. Because
this step-aside policy was in place for 30 days. All those accused had to step aside within 30 days. It hasn't happened. What kind of message do you believe this is sending to your electorate heading into an election year, Mdumiseni, and also what it says about the state of the ANC? The deadline has come and gone, and yet no action has been taken.
Well, I think it would be really premature to conclude that no action has been taken. What the National Executive Committee had done, it said that within 30 days, certain processes must be concluded by the national officials through the National Working Committee. What are those processes? One among those processes, first and foremost, is that there must be a consolidation of the list of the comrades who are affected by various legal processes that are taking place in our country, which was done and submitted to the National Office of the ANC. The second one was that the national officials were expected, and I believe they are either have done with that work or that work would be deposited to the next meeting of the National Working Committee. They were expected to ensure that we properly refine and develop terms and conditions under which each and every member, depending on their different circumstances, would be expected to step aside, because there was an understanding, there was a shared recognition on the part of the NEC that you can't just say step aside and it becomes automatic to everybody, because some of our comrades are in government, others are not in legislatures, are in the ANC offices and so forth. So you needed to regulate that process so that it's uniformity across the country. I believe that the national officials might have concluded that work. And certainly, I believe that when the NEC convenes within the next 10 days or so, it will receive a report in terms of how far that work has been done.
And the 13 names, Mr. Ntuli, that you put forward on the 19th of April this year, can you give me an update on those 13 names? Have they been submitted? Have they been ratified?
Yeah, we did submit the names that are from our province, and all of them are with the Office of the Secretary General. And all comrades as well who are affected by that were made aware. As you would know, that in KZN, we had an opportunity early last year to have an engagement with all comrades who are currently attending court cases or who are charged with various acts, allegation of misconduct. And everybody understood what the ANC processes were. And when we submitted the list a few weeks ago to the Secretary General, we simply had to submit a list that has got the names of comrades, many of which have also gone through our Provincial Integrity Commission. So there was absolute compliance on our part. And as I said, I think we should await for the NEC or the National Working Committee which was mandated by the NEC to conclude this process, to then articulate what then happens in terms of the practical actions that the NEC had mandated the NWC to do.
Mr. Ntuli, help me understand that process when these 13 names were submitted on April 19th this year. What did these comrades say when they knew that their names were going to be put forward for the step-aside application and knowing the various kinds of charges that have been reported on? Some of them, according to an online newspaper, charges of rape, murder, corruption, attempted murder, stock theft, driving under the influence of alcohol, illegal carrying of firearms, and I can continue. These are very serious charges. What was their reaction, these 13 comrades, when they knew their names were being put forward? What did they say to you?
That it was not, in our case, it was not a new process. You see, when last year the NEC took a decision that Congress must step aside and they must appear before integrity commissions, as Provincial Secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu Natal, I convened a meeting with all of those comrades who are affected by a variety of cases as we have outlined them. I sat down with them, I explained to them the resolutions of the National Conference, the decision of the National Executive Committee, and directed all of them to appear before the Integrity Commission, which they did. So when I had to submit the list now to the Office of the Secretary General, it was no longer a new process. I was no longer required, it was no longer necessary on my part to reconvene them again, because these are comrades who have joined the ANC voluntarily and therefore who are interested in its own processes and decisions. And they are quite aware that there was a decision of the National Executive Committee, which is the highest organ of our movement in between conferences, and that decision had to be carried out. And I believe that, and I'm quite certain that all of them were expecting that there would be absolute compliance, and that they will then have to await for the National Executive Committee to issue the next marching orders in terms of what needs to be done going forward.
Final question to you, Mr. Ntuli. Morally, outside of the legal framework that you've expanded on rather comprehensively, outside of that, I'm asking a moral question. Do you think the Secretary-General of the ANC should step aside?
Well, I do think that every other member of the ANC who happens to be affected by the resolutions of the National Conference and the decision of the National Executive Committee would be expected to comply with the directive of the organization, irrespective of the position they occupy in the movement. And I am not necessarily avoiding to mention a specific comrade, but the reason why it is not necessary to do so is so that we must avoid a situation where we appropriate conference resolution to specific comrades. And I had a sense that your question, Gareth, is predicated on the understanding that this resolution is about the Secretary General of the ANC, which unfortunately is not, because when the NEC took a decision in August last year, the SG had not been charged at that time, but it was a principled decision, and anybody else that happened to have been charged before or after that is merely a coincidence rather than a decision directed at them.
Okay. For the moment, I'm going to say thank you for your time in speaking to us. I'm sure we'll get clarity as the deadline continues to run over. My thanks to Mdumiseni Ntuli, the ANC Secretary in KwaZulu Natal.